What I discovered behind that wall rewrote everything I believed about my family. My name is Marcus Lane. I'm 34 years old, a freelance photojournalist, and I've spent the last 6 years pretending my brother never existed. His name was Tyler. He vanished one October evening in 2019 after a phone call with me short, rush, and filled with static. He'd said something like, "If I don't make it back, check the wall." I thought he was drunk, or high, or joking. He never made it back. For months I helped the police organise searches, posted flyers. But the trail turned to mist. No body. No goodbye. Just a missing persons report and a hollow feeling that grew roots in my chest. Last week something changed. I got an anonymous email. No subject line. No text. Just one high-resolution photo. A hand-painted portrait. It was unmistakably Tyler, staring directly at the viewer, but the background made my stomach turn. A pale green wall, partially cracked, with a thin red line running down from the ceiling like a wound. I zoomed in. The artist's signature said only B13. I started digging. B13 led me to a controversial underground art exhibit known for using lost subjects as models. They claimed it was all sage. I didn't believe them. I called an old contact, Hallie, an art dealer turned private investigator. She owed me. Within 3 days, she had a lead. There's a guy in Baltimore, named Oscar Rendell, collector of weird portraits, bought a dozen B13 pieces over the past 3 years, eccentric, off-grid, wears gloves in July, you'll like him. I didn't like him. His house looked like a child's drawing of a haunted mansion, gargoyles, rotting wood, windows too small for the frame. But I knocked, and he answered. Oscar Rendell was pale, with an unsettling smile and eyes like candle flames flickering and watching everything. "You're looking for B13, aren't you?" he said before I'd spoken a word. I lied. "Just curious about your collection." He led me in. The air inside was cold and dry, like a crypt. Each room held massive, surreal paintings. Some had faces blurred, others too sharp. And then, in a locked-back gallery, I saw it. Tyler's face again. But this time his mouth was sewn shut. "I don't usually show this one," Rendell said, locking the door behind us. "But you looked connected." I froze. "Who painted this?" "B13, of course, but he doesn't paint anymore." My voice cracked. "Why?" "Because he's here. Would you like to meet him?" I turned to him, confused. "Wait, he's alive?" Rendell smiled wider. "Alive? Not exactly. Follow me." He led me down a narrow staircase into the basement, past old lamps and tarps that smelled like copper and mildew. At the bottom, there was a thick steel door. He unlocked it with a key shaped like a rib bone. Behind it was a wall. Ale green. Cracked. Exactly like in the photo. And painted directly onto the plaster, not on canvas, was Tyler. His eyes looked real. Too real. Then the lights flickered, and his eyes blinked. I stumbled back, crashing into a metal shelf. Cans clattered to the floor. Oscar didn't flinch. "He reacts to certain stimuli," he said casually. "Light, sound, memory." I couldn't speak. I couldn't breathe. Tyler's eyes, my brother's eyes, were wet. Alive. Trapped behind a layer of glossy paint, blinking as if trying to communicate. "What the hell is this?" I whispered. Oscar's face shifted, the smile cracking slightly. "It's not what you think, or maybe it is, depends on how far you're willing to go." I didn't wait for an explanation. I lunged at the wall, pressing my palm flat against Tyler's painted cheek. It was warm. Fleshy. It moved. I recoiled as the surface rippled like skin. Oscar put a hand on my shoulder. "Careful. He doesn't like being touched." "I'm calling the police." "You already know that won't help." My hand trembled as I pulled out my phone. No signal. Of course. The basement walls were lined with thick concrete and what looked like clay plating. Oscar walked past me and stood beside the wall, his tone shifting to something more clinical. They're cold echoes, living memories preserved in pigment. Tyler was one of the first. "You're insane." "No," he said calmly, "I'm a curator. I find the stories no one else can see, and I give them permanence." I couldn't think straight. My brain spun in violent circles. How did he end up here? Where is his real body? Rendell's expression darkened. That is his real body, or rather what remains functional. Before I could react, a sharp noise rang out to low, right the coming. The light bulb above us flickered again. Then Tyler's mouth opened. It didn't stretch like a painting. It unzipped, revealing a row of blackened teeth and something moving behind them. A voice gurgled out. "Marcus." My heart slammed against my ribs. He knew me. Tyler was still in there. "What do I do?" I shouted. "How do I get him out?" Oscar shook his head solemnly. "You don't. Echoes can't leave there, Candace." "I'm not leaving him here." I grabbed a rusted metal rod from the corner and swung it hard at the wall. The impact sparked pain through my wrists. A crack formed just a hairline, but enough to make Tyler's eyes widen. He screamed. Not a sound from his throat. It came from everywhere, vibrating through the room like an earthquake. My nose bled instantly. Rendell tackled me to the floor. "You going to kill him, Tiest?" I fought him off, scrambled back to the stairs, but when I turned, the green wall was no longer there. It had closed itself. A solid surface now. Smooth. Clean. Like nothing had ever been painted. Rendell stood slowly, brushing dust from his coat. "You're part of it now, Marcus. You touched the echo. You've been marked." "Marked for what?" He gave me a chilling smile. "For remembrance. I fled that night. Drove without sleep. Didn't stop until I hit Pittsburgh. But every mirror since then. Every glass reflection. I swear I see that pale green wall. And sometimes I blink when I'm not supposed to. The nightmare didn't end when I left Oscar's house. It followed me. 2 days later, I was back in my apartment staring at my reflection in the bathroom mirror. I'd barely slept, and my head felt like it was filled with sand. The sounds from that basement, Tyler's scream, echoed in my mind just like the painting's eyes had followed me. I rubbed my temples, willing myself to stay calm. Tyler's voice still rang in my ears. "Mark." The crackling sound of the mirror rippled. I jerked back, startled, but when I looked closer, I saw nothing. Just my tired face, exhausted from the madness. The weirdest part was how silent everything felt, too quiet. It wasn't until I reached for the sink that I noticed it, a small piece of paper wedged between the faucet and the countertop. I unfolded it with shaking hands. The note was simple. A single line, written in messy, scrawled handwriting, "He's watching you." I froze. My breath caught in my throat. I looked around, the apartment suddenly feeling too small, the walls too close. Who had been in my apartment? And how did they know about my visit to Oscar's? The words made sense now. Echoes can't leave their canvas. But what if the echo could follow me? I shoved the note in my pocket and left. I didn't know where to go, but I couldn't stay there. Tyler's image, his silent, pleading gaze was everywhere I looked. I drove aimlessly for hours, not stopping, not speaking, until I finally parked at an old cafe in the outskirts of the city. A place I used to visit with Tyler when we were teenagers. The smell of burnt coffee and stale bread filled the air. I sat in the corner booth, my hands gripping the cup so tightly my knuckles went white. It had been hours since I had last eaten, but I couldn't remember the last time I'd actually been hungry. Every part of me felt numb. Then my phone buzzed, breaking through the silence. I hesitated. No one had reached out to me in days, no calls, no messages. Not even Ali. And I wasn't sure I wanted to hear from anyone right now. But I picked it up anyway. The text was from an unknown number. "Do you remember the night he vanished?" My heart stopped. I responded with trembling fingers. "Who is this?" The reply came almost immediately. "It's time you knew the truth. The wall isn't the only place he's trapped." I stared at the message. It made no sense. But something in me, something dark and cold, pushed me to respond. "What truth?" The response was even quicker, the place where the echo was made. "Meet me at 601 East Cranford Ave, 3 a.m. Don't bring anyone." I wanted to ignore it. I should have. But the words clawed at my mind, relentless. What if it was another lead? What if it was Tyler, somehow trying to reach me again? By the time I looked up, the cafe was empty, save for the bar still wiping down the counter. It was nearing 2 a.m, and a chill had settled in the air. I didn't know what awaited me at 601 East Cranford Ave, but I knew one thing for sure. I had no choice but to go. As I stood up, the reflection of my face in the cafe's window caught my attention. I looked out into the parking lot, and for a split second I saw something. A figure standing under the dim streetlight. Tyler's face. Not in a reflection. In real life. He was there. He was waiting. I ran. I bolted out of the cafe, my heart racing in my chest as the cold night air slapped my face. The figure in the parking lot stood motionless, bathed in the faint glow of a flickering street lamp. I couldn't breathe. I had to be hallucinating. There was no way Tyler was out there. Not after everything that had happened. But there he was. I could see his face clearly now, even from a distance. His hair was disheveled, and his eyes, those eyes still looked so familiar, yet so wrong. I didn't stop. I ran as fast as my legs would carry me, my feet pounding the cracked pavement beneath me, ignoring the voice in my head telling me to turn back. The man in the parking lot didn't move, didn't follow. He just stood there, watching me with an intensity that made my skin crawl. I reached my car, fumbled with the keys, and threw myself into the driver's seat. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely get the engine to start. But I finally did, and as I slammed the gear shift into drive, I threw a glance in the rearview mirror. The figure was gone, as if he had melted into the shadows. I didn't know whether to be relieved or terrified, but there was no time to think about that now. I had to get to 601 East Cranford Ave. The drive felt like an eternity. The streets played in my peripheral vision, the faint hum of the tyres on the road the only sound keeping me tethered to reality. I didn't know who had texted me or what truth they were talking about, but the urgency in the message was undeniable. I needed answers, or at least something that could explain what the hell had been happening to me for the last few days. By the time I reached East Cranford Ave, I was exhausted, my body aching from the constant tension. The address led me to an old warehouse at the edge of a dilapidated industrial district. The building looked abandoned, its windows covered in grime, the steel door rusted and bent. A few dim lights flickered from inside, casting eerie shadows across the cracked sidewalk. I parked a block away and walked the rest of the way, trying to steady my breath as my heart continued to thud in my chest. Every step felt like it was pulling me deeper into something I wasn't ready to understand. But I had no choice now. I had to know. The door was already open when I arrived. Not wide, but just enough for me to slip inside. I hesitated, scanning the dark, silent space around me. The air smelled musty, filled with the scent of old wood and oil. I stepped inside, the door creaking shut behind me, and immediately felt the temperature drop. My breath turned to mist in the air. "Marcus." The voice came from the shadows. I whispered, cold and faint, but unmistakably familiar. "Tyler?" I called out, my voice trembling despite myself. There was no answer. Just the rustling of something or someone moving in the darkness. I reached into my pocket for my phone, the screen lighting up as I turned on the flashlight. The beam cut through the dark, revealing rows of old crates, barrels, and what looked like long-forgotten machinery. "Tyler?" I repeated, louder this time. "Where are you?" I heard it again, the whisper, but this time it was different. Not a voice. A feeling. It came from all around me, surrounding me like an invisible force. "Behind you." I spun around. There, standing in the doorway, was a figure. Tall, hunched, wearing a long coat. His face was obscured by the hood, but his eyes, the same eyes I had seen in the painting. The same eyes I had seen in the parking lot. Tyler. But this wasn't the brother I knew. His skin was pale, stretched thin like paper. His mouth was twisted into a grotesque smile, too wide, too unnatural. And his hands, they were long, bony, like they didn't belong to a human. "Tyler." I whispered again, this time barely able to speak. "What happened to you?" The figure didn't speak, but he took a step forward, his movements jerky, as if his body was fighting against itself. Then, a voice not Tyler's came from the shadows. A cold, deep laugh. "Do you like what we've done with him?" the voice said, dripping with malice. I turned, my eyes scanning the dark corners of the room, but there was nothing. Only the laughter. Tyler reached out to me, his fingers twitching as if he wanted to grab me, to pull me into the darkness. I could feel it, the coldness, the unnaturalness. This wasn't my brother anymore. This is something else. I backed away, my legs trembling, and that's when I saw it. A large, cracked mirror on the wall. The reflection wasn't mine. It was Tyler's, but twisted. His reflection was smiling, but his eyes were empty. "Run, Marcus," the voice whispered again, closer now. "Or join us." And just like that, the mirror cracked wide open. The crack in the mirror spread like lightning. My heart was pounding in my chest as I turned to flee, but Tyler's twisted form reached out with a force I couldn't have anticipated. His long fingers grazed my arm, sending a jolt of ice through my veins. I yanked myself free, stumbling backward into the broken crates behind me. The air was thick with the stench of decay, a musty, suffocating presence that clung to my skin. I glanced around, desperate to find a way out, but the warehouse felt like it was alive, moving, shifting, like the walls themselves were closing in. Behind me, Tyler's form twitched, jerking violently as if fighting against his own body. His reflection in the cracked mirror grinned wider, impossibly wide, but his eyes, those hollow, black eyes, never left me. They followed my every movement. I turned and ran. The door was still open, but the closer I got, the more I realized something was wrong. The space between me and the exit seemed to stretch, the warehouse transforming before my eyes. The walls grew taller, darker, and the shadows, they moved. I heard the whisper again. It wasn't coming from Tyler this time. It was something deeper, something that seemed to hum in the back of my mind. "Behind you." I whirled around. The figure in the doorway had vanished, but the air grew colder, denser. A low, guttural sound filled the room, a hum, like the vibration of an unseen machine. I reached the door, yanked it open, and stumbled into the night air. The warehouse stood eerily still behind me, but I didn't look back. My legs were shaking, and my breath came in jagged gasps as I sprinted down the darkened street. Every instinct told me to run, to get as far away from this place as possible. But no matter how fast I ran, I could still feel the weight of them, whatever they were following me. I didn't stop until I reached my car. I threw myself inside, slammed the door shut, and locked it, gasping for air. My hands trembled as I started the engine and drove away. I didn't even know where I was going. I didn't care. I just needed to put as many miles between me and that cursed warehouse as I could. As I drove, my mind raced. The message, the cracked mirror, Tyler's thing, none of it made sense. And that voice, the one that told me to run or join them, was still echoing in my ears. I glanced in the rearview mirror, my reflection flickering back at me for a moment. But it wasn't just my face staring back at me. No, there was something behind me, something out of place. I turned my head sharply, but there was nothing there. Just the empty road stretching into the darkness. I shook my head, trying to push the fear away. I was losing it. I was tired, paranoid, maybe even hallucinating. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. Something had followed me out of that warehouse. The next thing I knew, I was standing at a red light, my eyes glazed over. The world outside seemed to blur, twisting like a painting in the wind. I rubbed my eyes, trying to clear the fog from my mind, when I felt a hand, cold and clammy, resting on my shoulder. I froze. It wasn't my own reflection that greeted me in the rearview mirror. It was Tyler. His face was impossibly close now, inches from my own. His eyes, wide and hollow, stared into mine as the car engine sputtered. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. Then his lips parted. "Join us, Marcus." And the world went black. I woke with a start, gasping for breath, my heart pounding in my chest. My hand shot out to steady myself, but I wasn't in my car anymore. I was lying on the cold, hard floor of a dimly lit room. It looked like the basement of a house, with stone walls and a low ceiling. The air smelled damp, thick with mildew. I pushed myself up, disoriented, my limbs aching. My head throbbed as I tried to piece together how I had gotten here. Then I noticed the painting. It was on the wall directly in front of me. A portrait. Tyler's portrait. And this time, it wasn't just a painting. It was alive. I could see him feel him trapped in that canvas. His eyes moved, pleading, but they weren't just his eyes anymore. They were my eyes too. "Welcome back, Marcus," the voice said again, not from the painting, but from somewhere in the room. I turned slowly, my breath caught in my throat. And there, standing in the doorway, was Oscar Rendell. His face was more twisted than I remembered. His smile, too wide, too jagged. "I told you," he said softly, "once you're marked, you can never escape." And as the door slammed shut behind me, I knew. This was the beginning of the end. The door slammed shut with a deafening clang, the sound echoing through the stone basement like the final toll of a bell. I could feel the air shift, thick with an oppressive presence. Dim light from a flickering bulb above illuminated the room, casting long, distorted shadows against the walls. The floor beneath me felt cold, and my breath came in shallow, panicked gasps. Oscar was still standing in the doorway, his eyes gleaming with a twisted satisfaction, a grin stretching unnaturally across his face. "Did you think you could outrun the truth, Marcus?" he asked, his voice calm but laced with something darker, something predatory. I didn't answer. I couldn't. My throat was tight, constricted by fear and the overwhelming feeling that this wasn't just a room, it was a tomb, and I had just been locked inside it. The painting of Tyler seemed to pulse with life. My eyes shifted in the canvas, following me wherever I moved. His lips quivered as if trying to form words, but no sound came from the canvas. "You can't escape it, Marcus, not now, not ever." Oscar's voice slithered through the room like poison, slowly creeping into my mind. My heart raced. "What have you done to him?" I croaked, the words barely leaving my lips. Oscar took a step forward, his gaze fixed on the painting. "What have I done to him?" he repeated, as if savouring the words. "I've given him immortality. You see, Tyler is more than just a memory now. He's become something beyond human, a vessel for the echo. The painting is merely the beginning, Marcus. The real transformation happens in the mind, in the soul." I backed away from him, my hand brushing against the cold stone wall behind me. No, this can't be real. This is insane." Oscar tilted his head, his smile widening. "Insane? For is it the only truth you've ever known?" I was losing control. Every inch of the room felt like it was closing in on me, suffocating me. The painting Tyler's face seemed to leer at me, the eyes now hollow and lifeless. But it wasn't just a portrait anymore. The eyes in the painting weren't his eyes, they were mine. I wasn't sure when it had happened, but somehow I was becoming part of it. "Why?" I gasped, my voice breaking. "Why are you doing this?" "Why?" Oscar repeated with a laugh, a sound that sent a chill running down my spine. "Because you're the missing piece, Marcus, you and Tyler, two halves of a whole. I've been waiting for you to realize that. You've been marked for so long, and you just never saw it. It was always you. From the moment you touched the echo in the painting, it became a part of you, and now." He paused, letting the silence drag on, before finally speaking again, his voice barely a whisper. "Now you belong to us." I staggered back, my body shaking, as everything he said began to sink in. It wasn't just Tyler that was trapped in that painting. It was us. We were connected, as somehow inevitably bound by the same force that had turned Tyler into that. And now it was too late for me. "What is this place?" I choked out, my voice trembling. "What's going to happen to me?" Oscar stepped closer, his expression softening, but only for a moment. "This is where the echoes live, Marcus, where memories, souls, and stories are captured and preserved. You were meant to be a part of it, just like Tyler." "No," I whispered, shaking my head. I can't be like him." You already are, Oscar said, his words so calm they felt like a knife slicing through me. You just don't know it yet. I glanced at the painting again. Tyler's face was gone. In its place was an empty void of my face staring back at me with cold, lifeless eyes. And then it clicked. The truth I had been avoiding. I wasn't here just to find Tyler. I wasn't here to save him. I was here because I was already lost, trapped in the same cycle, the same pattern of endless repetition that had claimed my brother. I was being replaced, consumed by the echo just as he had been. The room seemed to darken, the walls pressing in on me. My chest tightened. I could feel something deep within, something I couldn't understand, crawling through my veins, seeping into my mind. The painting wasn't just a place to keep Tyler. It was a portal, a prison, a trap that would eventually claim anyone who came too close. And now I had been marked. It wasn't over. It had just begun. I turned and ran. There was no plan, no clear escape. Just raw desperation. My legs felt heavy, as if the floor itself was trying to drag me back. But I had to move. I had to get away from Oscar, away from the echoes, away from the horror that was consuming everything I knew. As I reached the door, I tried to yank it open, but it wouldn't budge. I slammed my shoulder into it, pushing with all my strength. But still, it wouldn't open. Marcus, Oscar's voice came from behind me, soft, almost tender. It's over. You're already part of us. There's no going back. I didn't stop. I didn't listen. I kept pushing, kept fighting, until finally, with a loud crash, the door flew open. But when I stepped outside, the world had changed. I was no longer standing in the dark basement. I was back at the warehouse, the one place I had tried to escape. And standing in front of me, in the dim light of the street lamp, was Tyler. Not my brother anymore. The echo. I froze. Tyler, or whatever was left of him, stood under the same flickering street lamp that had once illuminated my brother's face in the parking lot. His figure was twisted, warped, a shadow of the person I had known. His eyes, still those same hollow, endless voids, locked onto mine, and I could feel the weight of them pressing into my very soul. It wasn't him. Not anymore. The figure before me was the echo, a fractured memory given form. The body was Tyler's, but everything else had been stripped away, replaced by something other. It was as if the soul had been erased, replaced with a hollow, insatiable hunger. Tyler? I whispered, my voice trembling. Please, no. The echo didn't answer, didn't even move. It just stood there, waiting, watching. Its mouth opened slowly, unnaturally wide, stretching beyond what a human should. Inside, it was dark, an abyss that threatened to swallow everything. The cold, empty eyes still gazed at me, pulling me in. My voice echoed through my mind. You can't run anymore. There's nowhere left to hide. I stumbled backward, my legs giving way, my heart racing. The familiar fear, the one I'd felt all those years ago when Tyler had disappeared, came rushing back, stronger than ever. Only now, it wasn't just my brother I had lost. It was myself. The darkness pressed in closer. I could feel it crawling through the air, thick and suffocating. My breath came in shallow gasps as I fought against the panic clawing at me. I had to get out. I had to escape. But every direction I looked, it felt like a trap. The world was closing in, the streets narrowing into a black void, stretching farther than I could see. The warehouse loomed behind me, its jagged edges towering over me like a prison I couldn't escape from. I turned toward Tyler, toward the echo, but his face remained frozen, staring, waiting. The silence was deafening. I'm sorry, Tyler, I said, the words barely escaping my lips. I never should have come back. I should have just let it go. The echo twitched. A small movement, like a flicker in its frozen state. It wasn't Tyler responding, though. It was something else. The body twitched again, this time with more purpose, more force. And then it spoke. You're one of us now, the voice whispered, the words dripping with malice. It was like my brother's voice, but twisted, hollow, like a distant echo that had lost its meaning. There was no escaping it. A cold shiver ran down my spine. The feeling of inevitability weighed down on me, the crushing certainty that my fate was sealed, no matter how hard I fought. The ground beneath me began to shake. The world around me seemed to warp, reality bending and stretching, like I was slipping out of it entirely. The walls of the warehouse faded into the background, replaced by a dark expanse endless and empty. It was as if the echoes had begun to bleed into the very fabric of the world. I looked down at my hands, and for a moment they weren't mine. They were his. Tyler's. The paintings. The cold, lifeless, inhuman fingers that now clung to the edges of my reality. I'm losing myself, I realized in horror. The world around me was unraveling, and I was being pulled into it. My mind, my memories, my very self were being consumed by the echo, the place where all things forgotten and discarded went to die. It's too late, the echo whispered, its voice growing louder, its words twisting like smoke around me. You belong to us now. I tried to scream. I tried to fight it, but no sound came from my lips. No struggle moved my body. I could feel myself fading, the very essence of who I was being erased, bit by bit. And then, all at once, everything went dark. I don't know how long I stood there, suspended between two worlds, the living and the forgotten, until I finally opened my eyes. And when I did, everything was different. I wasn't standing in the streets anymore. I wasn't even in the warehouse. I was in a place I couldn't describe, an endless void, dark and silent. There were no walls, no boundaries, just a vast emptiness that stretched into eternity. My body felt weightless, like I was floating, untethered from everything that had ever been. But then I saw it. A painting. Just like the one I had seen in the basement, the one that had trapped Tyler. The one that had stolen his soul. It was hanging in the void, glowing with an eerie light, and within it was me. I was staring at my own reflection. But it wasn't the man I remembered. It was a version of me that was cold, distant, lost to the darkness. My eyes were hollow, just like Tyler's had been. Just like the echoes. And in the distance I could hear it. The faint whisper. Welcome to the Echo, Marcus.